Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarech, we are continuing with Perek Shvi'i in the Rambam's Hilchos Torah, the seventh and final chapter in the Rambam's Laws of Torah Study in his Sefer Mada, his book of knowledge. And in today's Perek, we are going to discuss in depth Nidoi and Cherem, two different ostracizations and expulsions from the community. We're going to deal with their dinim and who and how one gets a Nidoi and a Cherem and how one is released from such punishments. Halacha Aleph, the Rambam begins with what to do when a great sage sins. Chacham zakim bechachma v'chein nasi ha'av based in shesarach. If you have a great Torah scholar or a leader of Klal Yisrael or his second in command that acts shamefully, ein menadin oiseh b'farhasya la'olam. You never put him into this state of ostracization in public. Ela im kain asa ki Yeravam ben Nevat v'chavedav. The only exception to that is if somebody sins to the extent of Yeravam ben Nevat, who is the first king of Yisrael, and his group of rebels, who by breaking off from the kingdom of Yehuda and creating the kingdom of Yisrael caused many Jews to sin by creating false deities outside of the Beis HaMikdash and causing people to bow down to these statues, etc. So unless you reach such a level like Yeravam ben Nevat, you never put this person into the state of ostracization in public. Aval, so anybody who commits any other transgressions besides this type of transgression, you give him lashes in private. Shenamar, as alluded to in the pasuk that says, that you stumbled in the daylight, and my navi will also stumble at night. What does that mean? Even though you stumbled, he who stumbled will be covered by the night. He kaved b'sheiv b'veisecha, and we tell this person who we are whipping for transgressing something, keep your honor and return to your house, aka don't air out your dirty laundry. V'chein kol talmid chachamim shenischayev nidoy. So too any great sage that is required to go into ostracization, asa leveistin likbaitz ulenadeisay demehera. A court should not jump to try these type of cases. Ella barchin midavar zeh. Rather, they should shun away and avoid these type of things. And the early sages used to brag about the fact that they never put a great sage into a state of ostracization, and that was even though they would give them this type of private whipping to reprimand them for their sins if they transgressed a fitting crime. And this is even with regard to the rabbinic lashes, which we said would be administered even for the nullification of a positive commandment. These type of punishments the court would be involved with. Halacha Beis, the Rambam is going to define the process of putting somebody into the state of nidoi. The ketzad hu hanidoi. How did this go about putting somebody in nidoi? And they say pliny bishamta, so and so is ostracized v'im niduhu b'fanav. And now if they do this in front of the defendant, they would say pliny zed, this person, he gets put into ostracization, v'acherem, and now this more severe type of excommunication, which we're going to define more in halacha hey, they would say pliny mecharam, this person is put into excommunication, va'arer, and he's cursed by Allah, by shvuah, by nidoi. Anytime we use in the court this language of he's cursed, it's talking about a type of curse, or a oath, or someone who's being put into ostracization. Halacha Gimel, the Rambam is going to speak about how we undo a nidoi, v'keitzad matirin hanidoi oy hacherem. How do we get rid of this ostracization or excommunication? We say to him, sharui lecha umachol lecha, that you are permitted and you are exonerated. V'im hitiruhu shalai b'fanav, pliny sharui lai umachol lai. And if we're doing this exemption not in front of him, so we say so and so is exonerated from his ostracization. Halacha Daled, the Rambam is going to speak about what an ostracization or excommunication actually entails. Mahu haminhag sheyinhag haminuda ba'atmai v'shanayag imai. What is the proper way a person who is in one of these nidois or cherems deals with himself and how others deal with him? Minuda asa l'saper u'lechabes ka'avel kol yemei niduyai. A person who's put in a ban of ostracization cannot get a haircut or wash his clothes like that of a person in mourning, ve'ein mezamnin olav, and we don't allow him to join in a zimun, which is what we combine together when we bench, and so too we don't allow him to join into anything that requires 10 people, for example a minyan. The purpose of all the above is to isolate the person from the social norms of the society, and so too a person should not sit within his daled amis, which we discussed was a person's immediate surroundings in every direction. However, we're allowing him to teach others Torah, v'shainin lai, and allow others to teach him Torah, v'niskar v'seicher, and he's allowed to do different types of business dealings, v'im beis b'neduyai, and if he dies within his period of osterization, based in shalchim, umanichin even, so the Beis Din places a type of stone on his coffin that says Kloimar Shehein Roid Min Oisai, which lets everybody know that this is as if they were stoning him, since he's completely separated from the community. And we don't need to say, we wouldn't eulogize this person or escort his body, which are different types of acts we do to someone who has died to give them honor. But since this person is in this state of ostracization, so we don't do these things because we don't want to give this person honor. Halacha hey, we stated before that a cherem is more stringent than that of a nidoy, and now we're going to define why Yaser, olav hamecharam, we have more strict rules when it comes to someone in cherem, she'ein shein ala cherem ve'ein shein in loy, that we don't allow him to teach others or be taught. Aval sheina hu la'atzma kedei shelo yishkach talmudai. However, he is allowed to learn Torah for himself in order that he doesn't forget the knowledge that he has. Ve'ein niskar in loy, and we don't allow him to do business, and we don't do business with him. Ve'ein noisin imai, we don't trade with him. Ve'ein misaskin imai elam at esak kedei parnasasai. The only business that we allow him to do is in order that he could stay alive. He's still a Jew and therefore needs a way of supporting himself to a basic manner, and therefore that is all we allow him to do. Halacha vav, the Rambam is going to speak about the length of a nidoy. Somebody who stays within his ostracization for 30 days, which was the normal time period a person would be placed in ostracization, and he doesn't ask for his ostracization to be removed. And it's important to note that even though 30 days was the normal time, that doesn't mean that a person can't be released from this ostracization earlier. It was just that is the normal time period that we would put a person in this ostracization for. So then we would place him in another round of ostracization for 30 days. Right now, if he sits in that second state of ostracization for an additional 30 days and he doesn't ask for it to be removed, so then we put him in cherem because he clearly was too comfortable in the state of ostracization, and therefore we increase his burden in order to make him return to the straight path. Halacha Zayin, the Rambam is now going to speak about removing these nidoy and cherem. How many people do we need to remove this ostracization or excommunication? We only need 3, and we need 3 even simple people, meaning not great halachic scholars. And now, if you have one person who is a level of mumcha, which means a great sage, he's able to remove this nidoy by himself. And you can even have a student remove this level of excommunication or ostracization in the place of his teacher. Halacha tes, if you notice, we skipped halacha ches. The Rambam La'am explains that the Rambam did not include ches in this chapter because he didn't even want to include one letter from the word cherem, which is such a stringent punishment, in the chapter dealing with the laws of cherem. So anyways, if you have 3 people that put somebody in ostracization and then they leave, and then this person who they put into ostracization does tshuva and he repents for that which they put him in originally, so then you can have any other 3 come and absolve him of his ostracization, even though they're not the original 3 that placed him in that state of ostracization. Halacha Yud, mi shalai yada mi nidahu. Now you have a very interesting case where a person does not know who put him in cherem. Now this must be talking about somebody who was put in cherem for embarrassing a great Torah sage, because we said in the previous halacha that somebody who, so to speak, didn't know who put him into cherem, anybody could come and absolve him of that cherem. So this cherem must have been placed upon him for degrading or embarrassing a great sage. And the only way to remove this type of nidoy or cherem was to appease that sage himself. So what's the solution in this case? You have to go to the leader of the Bnei Yisrael. And we said in yesterday's Perek that when a great sage puts somebody else into cherem because he embarrassed or degraded the sage, everybody below the level of that sage needs to adhere to the ostracization or the excommunication. However, the Nasi, who is the highest level out of any sage in Klal Yisrael, he does not have to adhere to this cherem or nidoy, and therefore the person goes to the Nasi to absolve him from his ostracization or excommunication in this instance. Halacha Yud Aleph, nidoy al Tanai. If somebody makes a ostracization on condition. He says this person will go into ostracization if he does so and so. Afilu mipi atzmai, or he makes it on himself. He says, I will go into ostracization if I do so and so. Sareh chafara. In that instance, you need to get your excommunication or ostracization absolved. Talmud chachamim shenidei atzmai afilu nida atzmai al das ploni va'afilu al davar shechayav olav nidoi harezeh mefer la'atzmai. However, if a person puts himself in ostracization, even if he puts himself in ostracization on the basis of somebody else, he is able to absolve himself from that ostracization or excommunication. We don't say that somebody who imprisoned himself cannot release himself. He could. If somebody gets put into ostracization during a dream, even if he knows who in the dream put him in ostracization, he can't go and ask that person to absolve him. Rather, rather, he needs 10 great sages who know halacha to absolve him of his excommunication or ostracization. The reason for this stringency is since he saw it in a dream, it's possible that this ostracization came from a decree from heaven, and therefore we say, since 10 people that the divine presence rests with them, so those 10 people are allowed to go and absolve this person of his ostracization. Now, if you can't find these 10 great sages, so you should go up to 4 kilometers in every direction to find a person and people that fit this level. If you can't find these 10 people, then you could absolve the ostracization based on 10 people that are proficient in Mishnah, which is a lower level than those who are proficient in halachas. If you can't find 10 of those, so then you find 10 people that are well versed in the Torah. If you can't find those, so then you could even absolve this person with 10 people that don't know how to read. And in the most extreme of cases, so then you can rely on 3 people to absolve this person who had a dream that he was put into ostracization from his level of ostracization. If someone was placed into a ban of ostracization in front of him, he should not be absolved from that ostracization except in front of him. And this is because of kavod. Now, if he was placed into this level of ostracization when he wasn't in front of the Beis Din, so then you could absolve him of the ostracization regardless of whether he's there or not. There's no set time between when a person was ostracized and when it could be removed, even though before we mentioned the 30-day period, that was the normal set time that a person would be put into this level of ostracization. But had he done tshuva at any time, it could be removed even seconds after it was placed on there. Rather, what can we do? We can remove the ostracization right after it was placed on him if he returns to the straight path. And now, on the opposite extreme, if a Beis Din feels that it's necessary to place somebody in ostracization for many, many years, they could do that based on his level of wickedness. Even though we said previously that the order would be to put someone into 2 nidois and then to place them in cherem, but if a Beis Din feels that a person needs to go into cherem, which is the more extreme excommunication, he can be placed in that excommunication even initially. And if somebody would go and he would eat and drink and go into somebody who was put into nidoi, the less extreme level of ostracization, and now Beis Din felt that they wanted to place that person into cherem, the more extreme excommunication, in order that they create a fence around the Torah and that the words of the Chachamim are not looked upon laxly by the general public, so then they could put that person into the cherem even though he was just socializing with somebody who was in nidoi. And even though a person has permission to put somebody in a level of ostracization for degrading his honor, it's not proper that a Talmud Chacham follow this trend that he's always putting people into ostracization. Rather, in general, somebody who's at this level of sage should turn away his ears from these frivolous conversations of the ignoramuses, and he shouldn't pay attention to the topics that are discussed by the Hamayim Am. And this is what Shlomo HaMelech said in his wisdom, that you shouldn't focus on all these things that are spoken about you, meaning people don't always understand what was being said, and they might act rashly before thinking about it. And if you're a chacham and you just start putting people into cherem, so you might not actually know the context, you might not have heard them properly, etc. And therefore, you should just close your ears and not focus on these things and not put people in cherem at all. And so too was the way of the early pious people. We mentioned this in short in the beginning. They would hear shame being spoken about them and they wouldn't respond. And not only that, rather, they would even forgive the person who spoke shame about them. And this is referring to the Gemara Megillah, which says that Nechunya ben Akana and Mar Zutra would forgive all people that wronged them every single night before they went to sleep. And the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, instituted that in Kriya Shema Lamita we say Hareini Moichel L'chol, etc., etc. So every night we absolve all those who have wronged us of their sins for this very reason. וחכמים גדולים היו משתבחים במעשיהם הנאים ואומרים שמעולם לא נידוי אדם ולא החרימוהו לכבודן. And the great early wise people would go around and they would say that they never put anybody into ostracization or excommunication. And this is the proper way for these great sages to follow, and we should follow this path. And now qualifying all of that, when were all of those things stated that we should have restraint, etc.? That's when he was shamed or he was embarrassed in private. But if somebody goes and shames and embarrasses a great sage in public, it is forbidden for this person to coil back and show restraint. And if he does go and absolve this person and ignore this person from sinning, so he is causing a sin on himself. Because this is a degradation of the Torah HaKadoshah, which we mentioned many times, that since a great sage got his honor from the Torah, if he is shamed in a public manner, he is actually bringing shame on the Torah itself. So rather, rather you should bring vengeance and hold it as a grudge, like a snake does. And why are we bringing the analogy of a snake? Because the Gemara in Erchin explains that a snake bites only as a messenger for Hashem. And similarly, when this sage acts this way, with begrudgingly and with revenge, he should do it only al das the fact that he's defending Hashem's honor. Not that personally he has any revenge or grudge within him, until this person is going to beg this sage for forgiveness, and then he must immediately forgive this sinner. Mazel tov for finishing Hilchos Talmud Torah, all 7 chapters of the laws of Torah study. Hashem, we should finish together all of Sefer Mador and all 14 books of the Rambam's Mishneh Torah in order that we will finish Kol HaTorah Kula. We will begin with Hilchos Avodah Zarah v'Chukas HaGoyim tomorrow.